Wait, guys, I know what we can do.
You do?
Let's play Charity McDennis.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No, because we're not playing it.
Yeah. What's Charity McDennis?
Charity McDennis is an awesome board game that we came up with many years ago on a day much like today.
That sounds like fun.
It's not fun. No, we're not playing it. We're not playing it. Don't start chanting it because we're not playing the game. We are not playing that game.
Fine. What's the big deal? It's only a game.
It's not just a game. It's a war.
Tune up, level up your fun. Tune up, your quest has now begun. Tune up, we'll show you how it's done. Tune up, tune up, tune up, tune up.
All right, friends, we are back for another episode of Tabletop Tune-Up. This is your host, Ben Dyer, with my buddy, Mark Lehman.
Hello, everybody.
And this week, we're going to mix it up a little bit. We're going to do something different. Really different, in fact. So normally, Mark and I get together. We do some notes ahead of time. We give you guys kind of like a presentation of our thoughts and experiences. We've got a pretty solid structure. This time we're going to do something a little bit more conversational, and we thought this would be a good way to break into a different kind of segment. This episode of Tabletop Tune-Up, we are going to spend our time doing a review of a line of games, actually, not just one game, but in other cases when we do these reviews, we might just review a single game, but from a specific publisher. In this case, it's going to be the first game I ever played. It's Palladium Books. They have all kinds of different games. The first one I played was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness when they had the license to the original Eastman and Laird comic. Was that your first two, Mark?
Yeah. Well, Roadhogs, I think, might have been my first one, which was based off the TMNT and
Right.
Other Strangeness. But yeah, I think those were that might have been my introduction to role-playing games.
Yeah, and so unlike a lot of people who came into D&D first, I started with Palladium Games, and then...
Well, real quick, Ben.
Yeah.
It should be noted. I don't know. I think it was the same with your house, but with my house, we were not allowed to play Dungeons and Dragons.
That's true.
Yeah, there was the satanic panic going on during that era, and boy, I tell you, you could summon demons with that game, and my parents were not about that. So we had to summon up some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, mutant sewer rats, they're cool. So yeah, no, that's for real. I mean, we were children of the 80s, and that was something that didn't go over well in certain quarters. So yeah, this was it. And so my first games were like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Heroes Unlimited, which was their superhero offering.
Ninjas and Superspies, which was, right up there.
Their Super Spy action movie offering, which is really amazing. And all of these had the same system essentially to them. They all had the same attributes, the same roles. And this is one of the early entrants in the kind of megaverse concept, right? So you could take this game system, and if you knew how it worked in TMNT, you also knew the rudiments of how it worked in Heroes Unlimited.
Yeah, honestly, it was the system that was the selling point for this game, and what made this game both wonderful and horrible.
Yeah. Well, and it's not the most famous of their offerings, right? The one that went bonkers was Rifts.
Yeah, and honestly, that always perplexed me because it was the one game that we never could really get any sort of traction with. We couldn't get a game consistently, but we could with Ninja Super Spies. We could with TMNT, but with Rifts, it was a one and done. God, we give it a shot. It just for whatever reason didn't work for us.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts about that. So maybe what we can do, go ahead.
Let's start with what we loved about
That's where I was
TMNT.
going.
Yeah, let's start with why we fell in love with Palladium Games.
Well, it sounds like you've got something on the tip of your tongue, Mark. What was it you loved about Palladium? And let's be broad about this. So it could be TMNT or Heroes or Ninjas or any of those games.
I'll tell you what it was. Their combat system had one of the most exciting things I've ever experienced at a table to this day, to be honest.
Yeah.
which was the strike, parry, dodge.
Okay. So for
And-
the uninformed or who haven't played Palladium, how's that work?
So if you were making an attack, let's say you were a sword wielder making your attack on somebody, you had an option of either dodging it, which means just stepping out of the way completely. You're just going to avoid the whole thing altogether.
Right. So if you're attacking me and I'm defending, you
Yep.
roll your strike roll, and it's a D20 roll, and like on a 4 or less, or sorry, on a 4 or more, I think you hit, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
And then if you hit, but if you do, that doesn't mean you've hit yet, right? Because then I can roll to defend, and my options are as you say.
Strike, parry, or dodge. Now, some things obviously could not be parried. That would be a hail of gunfire, but you sure as hell could dodge it.
Yeah.
And so it was really exciting having this competition back and forth. A sword is swung at you, you parry it this round. The next round, it's coming at you and you're dodging it. It was very exciting. There's no doubt about it. It was a different experience than like Dungeons and Dragons, where it's always on the person rolling the dice, whether you hit or miss.
Yeah.
That was not the case. You could have a great roll and followed up even a greater parry. And that feeling of like one-upmanship, I don't think can be topped.
Yeah, that competition in that very immediate way is really something. I do have the rules in front of me here for Heroes Unlimited, actually, and it is a roll of a 5 or better. So about a 75% chance just on a basic D20, which is kind of generous, I think.
Yeah, but when you throw in the idea that everybody's going to be trying to counter it with the dodge or parry,
Mm-hmm.
It starts to make sense. Now,
Yeah.
I don't think that one of their offerings never really quite got its due, and that was their fantasy game. Did you ever play the Palladium fantasy game?
I did not. Well, I'm trying to remember. If I did, I might have played it like once.
I think this system shined incredibly well with their fantasy offering, because you had the classic D&D with, strike, parry, dodge metric, and it worked really well.
Yeah.
I think when things start getting derailed with that whole system is when you start expanding it beyond into the sci-fi era with Rifts. And that's, maybe we can get into that a little bit later, but why we think Rifts is a bit of a failure, even though it's so freaking cool looking.
Here's the thing. Failure has got to be a qualified term because they sold a ton of books.
Oh yeah. And people love it.
Yeah.
And I will say what I always loved and I always respected was that really cool setting that Rifts had. For those who don't know what it was like, it's like you took everything you loved about sci-fi and fantasy and superheroes and you threw it in a stew and you stirred it up and made this amazing stew out of it.
Yeah.
And you wanted that stew bad. It looked so tasty.
Yeah. Well, maybe this is a good way to get to the things that I think Palladium did really well. People tend to complain about the Palladium Games systems, and not without some justice. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But the thing that I think kept people buying these books was just this incredible imagination that was in all of the concepts. It was really well written up. It was really imaginative, and it had great art to go with it. The Rifts art, the art that was in TMNT was from the original Eastman Laird comics, which was really inspiring.
Yeah. And keep in mind at the time, was it first edition, kind of the end of first edition?
Of D&D?
Of D&D.
Yeah.
And D&D's first edition artwork was not, I'm sorry, it was not the greatest. And I think Jeff D., who was a D&D artist, I think he peaked in Palladium Games. He had some fantastic drawings in Heroes Unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the artwork was really electrifying.
Yeah. When we're talking about these things being really well written up and really imaginative, let's talk about like a couple of our favorite classes, just from even across all the different kind of games we could play. One of the coolest characters you could ever play when I was growing up and playing these games in their first run was like a cyber knight. Here you are in Rifts. It's this post-apocalyptic landscape, but you know what? You're a hero. You are cybernetically augmented. You have psionic powers, and one of those powers is to summon a mega damaging sword that you can just always have. Like you can just bring it out of your mind, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And what a neat way to envisioned this amazing character, right? The write-up they had for it was great. The art was great.
Kevin Long, who did that artwork for a lot of that stuff.
He really was. Kevin Long's artwork is amazing. I don't know where he is now, but there was so much imaginative material to then bring into your games. And so when you were playing those games, you thought to yourself, I know just what this character looks like. I know just where they are. I know just the kind of vibe they're supposed to have. And you were excited to play that. Mark, what were some of your favorite Palladium classes?
The classes were not as big of a draw for me than it was for everybody. Because I was not a big fan of Rifts playing it. I drooled over that book many hours. I created umpteen characters with that book. Did I play it very often? Not really. However, what I liked a lot was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness. I liked the different animals, the species that they had in that were so cool. And you could design them from the bottom up. And to me, that was like a class. I mean,
so talk about that for a moment, because this was a super creative thing, friends. If you can't find a copy of the original TMNT and Other Strangeness book, like go pick it out. And Mark, how did they do the mutations and the animals and all that kind of stuff? What was the basic idea?
Well, first of all, you could pick among any animal that you could almost imagine, and you could create essentially a mutated version of that animal. And they used this thing called, I think it was called BioE. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
And it was an acronym.
Well, it was like biological energy.
Something of that nature.
Yep.
But you would have these points and you would spend them. And as you spend them, your either size grew or diminished based on if you were a small creature or a large creature. So that the general idea was that you were going to somehow end up somewhere in the realm of 3.5 to 7 feet tall in general.
Yeah.
You were going to be in that category.
You're going to start to take on human proportions.
But you had to buy things and you had to make choices. And you had to boy, if I spent 5 more BioE, I could get,
right,
this special ability. And
yeah, it's like this mutational energy that gave you a budget to make you more or less functional as a humanoid.
Yeah.
So you might have partial hands, or you might be not quite upright, or kind of walking around on all fours. It's hard to tell. But then some of the animal's special characteristics, like having claws, or if you were a skunk, being able to spray people, these things were all things that you paid for the ability to use as a character.
And they were all traits that animals had in the wild. Like they would have things like, I think an alligator got a burst of speed, which they're known to kind of have this quick burst where they attack. And cheetahs, of course, had great land speed, and porcupines had quills.
I think that was my first character, was a porcupine.
Okay. Mine, I don't remember what my first one was. My favorite one was a triceratops.
Oh, so dinosaurs.
Yes. Yeah, it was a dinosaur. I think they had a add-on book later, which included dinosaurs.
Transdimensional TMNT.
It was, oh God, it was so good. And I think it was Lawson, I think was the artist. I can't remember his first name. Might have been Kevin Lawson or something of that nature. He was an artist that used to draw on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, kind of in their second generation when Eastman and Laird started bringing in other artists. In any case, he did a lot of the drawings for that transdimensional. And again, it was knocking it out of the ballpark.
Amazing book. Yeah, there's a whole line of those Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series books that are really fun and inventive.
One thing that was kind of fun about these books too is you can't take the garage aesthetic out of these books. They look like, in some sense, they look like they were made by people in their basement using all the best printing tools they could. There was a real hands-on feeling when you looked at these books. And that was like love. Like these people were working hard to make a great product, and it looked great, but there was definitely kind of a little bit of a jankiness to it, which I, to this day, kind of enjoy.
Yeah, this is the age of pre-digital publishing. So everything you're seeing is like actual written typescripts. And actually with some of the books, I think you can see corrections. There's a little bit of a difference in some part of the page and the text that's on it. You're like, I think that's where they literally laid over a little scrap of paper that had some new writing on it.
I had one of my versions, I think it might have been the second edition of TMNT. I had actual paper that was glued on over the actual paper. So there was like 2 sheets of paper, one glued on top of the other,
Oh, wow.
because they did some sort of corrections with some pretty controversial, like mental psychosis type things you can get with your character that was pretty offensive in today's standards. But back then it was offensive too. So they just covered it over with like a strip of paper. God bless them.
Boy. Well, maybe this is a good moment to sort of turn over to the things that didn't work so well about TMNT and the other Palladium books. So when people complain about this series of books, the Palladium system in general, like what do they not like?
I can tell you what I didn't like right off, like early on, and what makes me not want to play it now. And it's not anything to do with the system, which I think is still wonderful. Like, I have no problem with the strike, parry, dodge. I think to this day, I think it's one of the best systems I've seen for handling combat. However, the lack of GM support it's just not there. There's very little, and the amount of work you have to do to create encounters and create creatures in which you want to have people fight against was almost a deal breaker.
Yeah, it's certainly the case that they did publish later, I think, for Heroes Unlimited, like a GM's guide, and it has some kinds of things in it. But
years
in general,
too late.
I agree. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I will say this. I do think that their system was one that rewarded a lot of min-maxing and rewarded a lot of interesting kind of bonus stacking. And the more kind of powerful the system could be, because you were playing like a superheroes game like Heroes Unlimited, or you're playing Rifts, and every book in Rifts, like there was power creep. And so the characters got more and more bonkers. All of that stuff, I think, contributed to a thing where, the game could really quickly get out of control.
Those early books still shine, guys.
I agree.
Because they're kind of balanced in a way that they were maybe they just were. They were kind of, the power creep hadn't gotten into it. But as Ben says, when you start dealing with all these different superpowers and things that get really kind of out there as far as, high powered abilities, low powered abilities. Yeah. As Ben, you said, they begin to creep in.
One of the other things too is that I think in Ninja and Superspies especially, but somewhat in Heroes Unlimited, there's a lot of skill creep as well. There's a lot of there's so many skills in Ninja and Superspies. You could come out of character generation after spending a couple hours, like writing them all down, figuring out all the bonuses, and it could be a lot. And most of the time, you're not going to use all of those skills. It's more a representation of things your character knows. And I think what's interesting is that you look at later systems, and what they would do is they would resolve that with like a background. They'd say, well, this is your background and this is where you came from. And so as a result, you can do these things, but that's generally enough.
But their backgrounds, one of the things they included in their game was education level, or where you got your education from. And it was all randomized. You would roll on a D100 and that's what you got.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, the discrepancy between your, bachelor's degree and your doctorate in Ninja Superspine were insurmountable. And one character's coming out of there was so much more than the other character who rolled low. It was almost like when you're putting a group together, you're like, man, I'm sorry you only got your GED. I'm like,
well, that's another point. And this is an interesting thing, because this is one of those things that I think if you talk to the Palladium diehards, they'll say, well, look, your bug is my feature, right? There is no effort to balance what all the different classes can do.
Absolutely zero.
If you end up in Rifts with a glitter boy and somebody has like a street rat that has like no special armor or weapons, like, I'm sorry, that's it. And they're going to say, like, be creative and stuff like that.
And this kind of goes to that whole thing I was talking about, GM support or lack thereof. Like, you had to balance the fact that you had players that were wildly unbalanced, unless you were skilled enough as a GM to recognize, like, hey, we need to have some parity here if we're going to have a successful campaign. So there was a lot of front-loaded work the GM had to do, even before you even crafted a story, just in the character creation process.
Yeah.
It was so involved.
Well, so there's some challenges with respect to balance. There's some challenges. I think there's some challenges in the nitty gritty of some of the combat system elements. So for example, if you had characters who had more attacks. I could make a character that had 5 attacks. You could make a character that had 3. And you and I could trade attack, and then I'd get 2 free attacks after that. And that to me always seemed like not well supported conceptually. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
So, but let's do this. I want to kind of end on maybe a slight positive note, or at least a kind of a final judgment. So when you think about Palladium Games, what's your kind of final vote? Do you give it a thumbs up and you'd recommend? Would you recommend with conditions, or would you say, nope, stay away from this one?
Ben, I got serious love for Palladium Games, and a lot of it is nostalgia. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I'm running on nostalgia fumes. I had a lot of fun playing that game, and I have good memories of it. And I do think for other people, there could be good memories to be had there. I will say that some of the later stuff I'm not a big fan of, but that's okay. I don't have to be. I still have all my Ninjas and Superspies books. I have my TMNT books. I could run a game of that and I would be satisfied. So will I go back to it? Maybe not, but it's a fun experience, particularly that TMNT. Like if you haven't played it, if you can get your hands on those books, you'll have a good time.
Yeah, I think they did a reprint of it later. So there may actually be a few more of those out there. And of course, friends, we've talked about Gen Con. If you're headed to Gen Con this summer, you can probably find a copy or 2 at the book dealers that are there. My vote would be enjoy with conditions. I don't think it's the best game to bring somebody who's never played a role-playing game before to bring them into a Palladium game. I do think that people who are a little more experienced and ready to be kind of flexible with the game's assumptions are going to have a better time. I certainly think that whether or not you decide to play it, these are great books to own, read, look at the art, get inspired, and really explore and enjoy. And I do think that the best versions of these games are not the ones that are the most bonkers. Because, Mark, you and I played a sequence of games that were in some cases years apart when we used their Beyond the Supernatural system, which we haven't mentioned, but that's their kind of supernatural horror game. And we played a kind of an investigation group. And because we were all very low powered, all the monsters got a lot more scary, and it was a very fun horror experience.
Yeah. I mean, these games can be used in all sorts of ways, and you can have fun with them. I just want to also mention one thing, Ben. I ran a game for kids, like their very first gaming experience, and I chose TMNT.
Oh, okay. So you did bring new players in.
I did. And what I did is I had them pick a character. I pick an animal. And then I let them pick an animal, and we made characters based on the animal that they loved. It was a very fun experience for them to come in. I think they might have gone on to other games that were easier to run for them, but it was a really fun way to bring kids into a game where they got to play that animal that they've always been like obsessing about as children.
Right. That's fantastic. I want to play an elephant. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Here we go.
So like thumbs up, like we conditionally thumbs up.
Be smart about it. Read the book first. As always, see if it fits your crew. All right, for this week's tune-up segment, we are getting ready for convention season. And some people go to local conventions in town. If you live in a town that has one, a lot of towns do. Other times you travel for some of the big conventions like Gen Con or Origins or other games like that. Dragon Con, I think, is popular too. Mark, what were some of the first conventions you ever visited?
I mean, I've been to conventions a good part of my life, but mostly Comic-Cons.
All right.
A lot less gaming conventions. In fact, the first gaming convention I went to was Gen Con, and that was with you.
Didn't we do Games Fair back in Spokane?
Yeah, you know what? We did. I forgot about that. You dragged me into that Star Wars game, and it was god-awful.
I love that when your memory recovers, the first thing you think of is, this is what you did to me.
Yeah, I remember, I think I just got up and left the table. I was so bored. I just was like, I'm out of here.
Yep.
Don't do that, you guys. That's rude. I was young. I was a dick.
Oh, boy. Well, so I think that's our way into this week's tune-up segment request. We wanted to answer a question that was, hey, any tips for convention going this year? So, Mark, as you said, we have done Gen Con, and we've done some other ones. What are some of your tips for how to get the most out of these experiences and things to definitely do or not do when you go?
Well, first of all, figure out what experience you want to have. Are you a collector of artwork? If you're a collector of artwork, come prepared. Bring something you could put the artwork in. Are you a collector of dice? Figure out your budget. Make sure you have something, a backpack or something to carry stuff in. But figure out what you want to get out of your game convention. Do you want to play games? Do you want to just look at new products? Try to map out what you want to do and come prepared to do that. And that means come with comfortable shoes, come with the right kind of stuff to carry things with. That's one thing I didn't do my first time around. I did not have a way to bring back that artwork. I ended up getting a pizza box and putting the artwork in a pizza box and carrying it around at Gen Con.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good kind of note. I mean, there's just to kind of get acquainted with what to expect. If you've never been to one of these conventions, at a big convention like Gen Con or Origins, what you're likely to find a lot of events going on that are games that you might want to play. You'll also find that there's usually kind of a trade room or a dealer's room, something where vendors who sell things, games or art or whatever it might be, they're going to all sort of be collected there. And, you see this in Comic-Cons too, but it's beyond that. You might have panels or discussions or other kinds of games. There's a lot of things there could be. The trick is kind of, as you say, Mark, knowing what you're going to go there for, making space for yourself to be human, to give yourself time to get from place to place, to get a meal, to carry away the great loot that you're going to buy when you're there. And then, it's funny that you talk about having gotten up and left a game. You're going to probably try out games. When I go, I want to go try out games I don't normally get to play. And so when you do that though, like I've gotten up from games too and left. And usually that's something where you probably should have a good reason. Like, of course you can always get out and go when you need to go, but I feel kind of bad about it if I've signed up. Usually you'll pay some money to sit there at that table and play that game.
It's really disrespectful to all the other players who are sitting at the table putting in the time.
Yeah.
And my God, the GM, it's just super disrespectful. So like,
it can throw
I
them a
joke
curveball.
about it. I joke about it in the beginning, but I was young and stupid. Don't do it.
Yeah. Life happens, right? But you're there to have fun, play the game, give them a chance to try it out. And at the end of the day, if you don't like it, that's fine. But it's the best place I can think of to be experimental with the games you want to play.
One thing I did for my convention days, particularly with the Comic-Cons, is I'm a big buyer of I like to buy artwork that I hang around my walls and stuff, just kind of, I just love artwork.
Do you have a favorite piece?
Oh yeah, I have many. Brahm is one of my favorite.
All
I
right.
got a great Brahm painting of the White Wolf.
Gerald Brom. The White Wolf is Elric, right?
Yeah. And I got a Lee Weeks picture of the Thing. While not my favorite comic artist, this picture of the Thing is amazing.
Yeah.
And it is on my wall.
Really captures old blue eyes there.
Yeah. One thing I like to do is I like to scope things out for a few days. I don't buy anything. I wait for the last day to buy stuff. A couple reasons why. I don't like carrying this stuff around.
Yep.
And number two is oftentimes convention goers are trying to get out of there. And they're trying to get rid of as much as they can to make less weight for them to carry back home.
Your dealers want to go home with empty boxes, not full boxes.
Yes. You will find better deals on the last day. You might miss out on a few things that you saw and you wanted to get because they've been sold out. However, again, you find better deals on the last day.
Yeah. Now that's particularly true of Comic-Cons. I'd have to see if that's true of Gen Con too, but.
Oh, it's true of Gen Con.
Yeah. Okay.
I experimented with that.
Okay.
Particularly with the artwork. I will say with some of the dice, if there's dice you really like that are really hot, they're going to be gone.
Yeah.
So pick those up. One dice goblin to another.
Yeah. Good. And to your point about storage space, right? A lot of people, if they're going to go to Gen Con, they're going to be flying there. Make sure you got enough room in your bag to take all that stuff home. All right. Well, I think that wraps up our tune-up segment for today and our review of the Palladium system games as well. We will see you in a couple weeks, and we'll have another tabletop tune-up for you then. Until then, keep those dice rolling.
Tune up, level up your fun. Tune up, your quest has now begun. Tune up, we'll show you how it's done. Tune up, tune up, tune up, tune up. Tune up, level up your fun. Tune up, your quest has now begun. Tune up, we'll show you how it's done. Tune up, tune up, tune up, tune up. Tune up, level up your fun. Tune up, your quest has now begun. Tune up, we'll show you how it's done. Tune up, tune up, tune up, tune up. Come get your tune up, it's time for your tune up. Your game needs a tune up. Come get your tune up, it's time for your tune up. Your game needs a tune up. Tune up, tune up, tune up. Come get your tune up, it's time for your tune up. Your game needs a tune up. Come get your tune up, it's time for your tune up. Your game needs a tune up. Tune up, tune up, tune up, tune up, tune up. Tune up!